only among staff, but staff on student and student with students. Where institutions have policies in place, these institutions are encouraged to review their policies to ensure that it keeps in line with legal prescripts. We further engaged various institutions to establish relationships, among others with SAPS, to address the issues of gender-based violence both on and off campus. In some institutions, campuses have built more residences on campus to minimize students living off campus. Security measures were also put in place to strict security measures, which also includes cameras, fencing, biometric systems on campuses, and mobile apps for those who may be in danger. In conclusion, it is quite evident that females experience various challenges at institutions of higher learning despite the measures and interventions that is put in place. The affected females whose rights are violated are encouraged to then also report such matters to both the SAPS as well as the Chapter 9s available to deal with these types of violations. We then also continue to monitor the implementation of the recommendations that's been made to universities since 2014 and going forward then also with other institutions of higher learning, not necessarily only universities, and that will then also be monitored in terms of implementation. Thank you very much, Zero.
Thank you so much, Acting Chief Executive, for that input. Certainly, it raises some fundamental issues around policy matters around the issues of higher learning. But most sadly, the abuse on marks and exams where lecturers, some of them experience, students, most of them experience some coercion from the lecturers for them to be given a pass mark to return sexual favors. I think that's very extreme conduct and wrong conduct from the lecturers at those universities. And certainly, we are also raising fundamental issues around reporting or under-reporting of these cases, which then means that the efforts by the Commission in education and awareness on around these critical transformation issues and the existence of the Commission becomes important in this regard. We have also raised critical areas around the interventions that we are making, as well as the collaboration that we have with SAPS, and certainly one certainly hopes that those interventions and collaborative work that is going to be undertaken will certainly arrive at a point where most of these issues are addressed. But I must say that we have a long way to go, right? And it will take all of us to work together to deal with the scourge of GBV, gender imbalance, as well as making sure that the girl child finds home and comfort in these very important institutions that are being led by yourselves. We seem to be having challenges with the panelists from the South African Police Service. We're informed that she's currently in a meeting with the National Commissioner of the Police, and she'll be joining us very soon. We also wish to take this opportunity to alert the attendees that in the event that there's a comment that was made, certainly would appreciate that hands be raised up in this platform, as well as use the chat box for any questions that may arise, as well as to raise, use the facility that we have to raise these questions. I've noted, Dr. Carlson, that already you do have a number of questions that have arisen in respect of the inputs that you have made. So.
Yeah, sorry, yes. I have the issue of accessibility of our sites. All our portals are zero rated, so students don't pay in any way to access our portals, to log their registrations, and also for query management. On all our other social media, we are negotiating with 2 more service providers. The rest are all free. Also, our hotline is free. Our 0800 number is free. 08,000 at NSFAS is free. So it's quite easy for students and for parents to engage with us. But just on another note, which I forget to mention, that within the Department of Higher Education, we have an organization called Higher Health. They were first called HE8, and they have rolled out, especially during the COVID period, the lockdown period, they have rolled out medical services to most students across all the campuses. But there is a growing realization that beyond just the medical services, I'm talking about, the clinical services, there is a deep, deep need for emotional and psychological services because of the damaged psyche that a lot of our students are faced with. And when I say damage, I say it very advisedly, because when you are faced with trauma, it leaves a mark on you. And poverty is trauma. I come from a poverty background, so I know that it's traumatic. And so the improvement or the enhancement through this HE health programs on campuses must begin to very critically look at the emotional well-being of our students, not just the physical well-being. That's very important because the two are inextricably linked. But that the focus then shift to the emotional well-being, the self-awareness, the self-worth of our students. Because being a poor student on campus brings with it a whole host of challenges that you bring from your home. And in many ways, our students can only assert themselves in a physical way to try and dominate other people, to establish their manhood, if I can use a crude term as that. And so we have to also to begin to look at the self-worth. And now the exploitation of students by lecturers, it is actually quite sick. But it is actually another danger lies in that. It then begin to tell our students that if there are shortcuts to be had, then you actually can take up the shortcuts. And that again establishes different behavioral patterns when those very same students then go out and work outside there. So it's more than just the act of the corruption of the student. It actually builds a corruptive mindset that is going to permeate it throughout our society, that you can, if you do certain things in a particular way, you can get ahead much quicker. And so that scourge must be rooted out. I'm actually at pains to begin to understand why people that are so well learned and well educated would resort to such base behavior and exploit the poor and the vulnerable. But that's probably, I shouldn't climb onto my moral horse here, but all I'm just wanting to point out is that it's not just confined to the university. That person then takes the psychology with him or her into the adult life, and which is not good for our society.
Thank you so much, Doctor. We have also received a whole host of questions from the students, being from the Black Lawyers Association. And one of the questions that we've received...
COO?
PP?
Yes, yeah, no, I lost you for some few minutes, but I think I see Lieutenant General Musikili is with us. So I don't know whether she's still struggling to join and her mic is still on. Is there somebody who's checking with her whether she can also, be audible or to be connected or assisting? Because I think it's very critical for her to address the students, and especially there are a lot of questions which they have for her.
Yes, PP, we have been in contact with the office. We have been informed that she's currently in a meeting with the commissioner, and we have been informed that her administrative office is the one that has joined, but she's not in the webinar at this stage physically. Thank you, PP. We have also received a number of questions from the Black Lawyers Association, the student chapter of the BLA. And one of those questions has been directed to the public protector, and it reads as follows. When will the PP investigate the skewed appointment process in institutions of higher learning, especially in UNISA, as there is apparent appointments of proximity to such people? PP, this one is directed to yourself about when are we going to be investigating the irregular appointments at institutions of higher learning.
Okay, thank you for the question or clarification. I think it's very critical for the students to know that the Public Protector's Office investigates when we receive a complaint, or as well when we are picking up a systemic problems or challenges in various institutions. As you know that we investigate more than 1,000 public institutions, but with the Public Protector, we don't have jurisdiction over the private sector. But if our investigations involves the private sector or private individuals, definitely we will also follow that route of being inquisitive in our investigations and to get the information. I would recommend that the students, if they have that particular information or those allegations, they can lodge a complaint with the Public Protector, and institutions or organizations like Black Lawyers Association, especially the student chapters, are the ones who are very critical in various institutions on issues which have been raised or questions which they have, or challenges they are facing on discrimination, whether institutions are not implementing GPV policies, or the challenges of NSFAS. We've received several complaints about NSFAS, which we will still engage directly with Dr. Randall, or we've already started doing that engagement and seeing how we can have an understanding of entering into some form of agreement or MOU, so that when we have all those questions, queries within NSFAS, they have a complaints unit where we can refer them and they deal with them. But then if those relates then to allegations which are conduct failure related or corruption related, those ones we will investigate with the cooperation of NSFAS. So I would suggest that let them lodge the complaint. If it's about irregular appointments, we investigate the number of those, where as well there are allegations of nepotism or allegations that the universities have not followed any process. But if it relates to appointment possibly then of male counterparts without giving an opportunity to the issues of employment equity, I think the Gender Commission is the proper institution to follow that up. So I will encourage the student chapter to document all those and send them to the Public Protector to investigate. And it will help to have specifics as well. Yes, we do receive anonymous complaints. Also, you can do that, but then give us the details, the officials involved, and then we will conduct the investigation. Thank you.
Thank you, Advocate Mkhwebane. Dr. Carlson, I think as expected, there is quite a number of questions that we have on our chat. Bonginkosi Krai is indicating that NSFAS says they're withdrawing funding for those who have been found to meet the 350,000 threshold. Is it necessary for NSFAS to pursue criminal proceedings against the said students instead of trying to retrieve that money? And then there's a question on why is that NSFAS treat UNISA students different from other students from other institutions? And there's a question of the students having to buy, to choose between food, books, and a laptop.
Okay, do you want me to respond now? Is it my slot? Okay. So first of all, we are a Schedule 3A company, and we execute government policy. Of course, we do have an enormous amount of influence in shaping that policy together with the Department of Higher Education. But once that policy is set, contrary to many people believing, there is very little discretion when irregularities are found or when maladministration is found from an accounting officer. So, for instance, I cannot act against one student and decide I'm not going to act against another student for a similar offense. And so where maladministration is found, I have to act regardless of timing or political pressure or whatever the case may be. And I'm saying this because the issue of withdrawing the 5,000 or funding for 5,000 students was a very, very sensitive issue, which we agonized over for a long time. And perhaps just a quick background on that. In the past, NSFAS used to validate income for people that declared on the application forms. We used to validate that income through the credit bureau system. Now that system is not very accurate. In fact, it's very unreliable. And one of the things that we did was to sign an MOU with SARS to get more accurate information. In fact, the MOU with SARS provides us now with additional information on income beyond just salary. So we can look at income from investment and income from rental. And when we washed the 2020 applicants through that system, we found 5,000 students that that household income exceeded the 350,000. And we cut off at 400,000 so that we make sure that we don't have marginal cases. The question was then, what do you do? So as the accounting officer, we had to immediately withdraw such funding. But we did understand also that that funding, that we need to provide people with an opportunity to petition in case their household circumstances have changed or in case where SARS data may be inaccurate. And we've got the statistics now in on that. But the point is that, so we will have to recover that money because it's fiscus, it's taxpayers' money. And the issue of charges, that's a secondary, well, I wouldn't say secondary, that's the next consideration. The first consideration was just to clean up and make sure that we don't unfund students that are not affected or that have a legitimate claim. And for me, that is the most important, to get that students' funding reinstated where their circumstances have changed. I must say, though, that of the 5,000 so far, we find very little students or very few students that we could reinstate. The last time I looked, it was 6 students and from 3,000 that were processed already. So the issue of what's going to happen, we will have to think through very carefully. I'm sure the Public Protector's Office will be able to tell all of us about the amount of complaints they get about very wealthy students abusing the NSFAS system, to the extent that our hotline has prompted us to actually wash. That is actually the amount of complaints we got on our hotline actually prompted us to seek for this MOU with SARS. And so there is very little discretion that I can display to say that can we unfund the student or can we not unfund the student. The rules are quite clear. We have to act according to the rules. And I'm saying this because a lot of people are vilifying NSFAS for being insensitive or, you know, not having the plight of the poor at our heart. We feel terrible to having to do this because we know in some cases, even though you might miss the cutoff point, that even if you earn 400,000, it's very difficult to have a child on campus. The issue with UNISA students, different from other students, UNISA is a distance learning institution. And distance learning institution students are treated differently. They are considered to be mostly working students, and therefore they only get what is known as a teaching learning material allowance. The fact that UNISA has over the years begun to assume a contact-facing institution is something that DHET has to apply its mind to. So that is the differentiating factor. The issue of choice between food, books, and laptops. NSFAS provide different sets of allowances. So the first allowance, of course, for your tuition, the second one for your residences, and then you can stay either on a catered residence or a non-catered residences, but that particular allowance take care of food and accommodation. And then there's a separate allowance called a teaching aid, I should stop using this word, learning material allowance. And the learning material allowance of 5,200 Rand is meant to enhance, it's meant to provide you access to learning material. Now, this was called erroneously so in the past a book allowance, and that provided a monopoly for booksellers to access this allowance. We stopped that because, first of all, it's anti-competitive, and second, it was not intended for books. And thirdly, we wanted our students to move into the fourth industrial revolution, to have access to material beyond just the classroom, which can be then facilitated by laptops or devices. Now, some universities from last year already started to apply this annual 5,200 Rand towards the purchase of laptops. When we arrived in this year, some universities continue to do that, but with the lockdown and COVID, we were approached by a number of vice chancellors to say they have already paid out the learning material allowance to students. With COVID lockdown, they now understand that they have to widen their reach. Can't NSFAS help them? And we developed a proposal which we sent to the minister and say, there is no extra money to give to people, but what we can possibly do is to offset this year's learning allowance against next year's. So we were provided with a list of all those students, and we have then developed a cash flow mechanism for them so that they can access next year's learning material allowances against this year. Now, of course, there are challenges. Some students might drop out, some students may finish, but we've got a policy in place for all of that. I think I go to this elaborate explanation to illustrate that it's not a choice between books and computers. Because for a 3-year degree, you get funded for 4 years. So in fact, your learning material over the 4-year period is 22,000 Rand. What we are saying is part of the 22,000 Rand should be used, preferably in the first year, to obtain data and to obtain a device that gives you access to wider than just the classroom. And so COVID has taught us that the face-to-face remain important, but once it's augmented with learning material that can take you to spaces outside of the classroom, it is so much more valuable, especially where you have a pandemic conditions. But there are more reasons why students should have access to the wider world. These days in China, students don't take out books, they download the chapters that they need. You can go to any other university to look at their YouTubes on a particular subject. So it just enhances the learning material so much more. So it's not a question of food, books, or laptops that you have to make a choice between. The food is catered for separately. The learning material allowance, we are pleading, should be optimally applied to enhance the learning experience. But it also gave us opportunity to introduce that for TVET colleges. And TVET colleges, I think some people will tell you on this panel, feel especially aggrieved because their allowances in the past were much different from university allowances. So TVET students will always tell you that the stomach is the same size as a university student. So we were able to narrow that differentiation, but we're also able now for the first time ever to be able to issue them with laptops. Now those laptop tenders are out. I should just say that of the NSFAS students, and this is perhaps an important point, of the 700,000 students or so, already more than 100,000 students already have laptops because some of the universities before COVID even had applied the learning allowance for that. Unfortunately, there's been a delay. If we had planned it properly, we could have planned it for the beginning of 2021, but now we bring it in the middle of the 2020 academic year. But it's an absolute necessary step for people to catch up with. And it all speaks to the issue of access to the best quality of education. But there's a lot more to be said about the laptop issue. I think I just wanted to point out that it's not laptops or books or food. It's not that discrete.
Thank you, Doctor, for that clarity.
I'm afraid I'm taking up all your time.
Ms. Van Niekerk, the question on inadequate policies at the tertiary institutions is again lingering upon us as to what is the role of the Commission in terms of those inadequate policies, more particularly that deals with gender inequality as well as GBV. And the second leg of the question is, are you willing as a commission to work with students, law students in those institutions so that there could be greater level of collaboration on the issues and challenges that female students are facing in those institutions? Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. In terms of policy and policy development, when we do our transformation hearings, we do request a set of the adopted policies and even those that's still in draft form. And we go through the policies to see if they're adequate. If they're not adequate, we do make recommendations to amend the policies. In many instances where there's not a policy in place, we do work with the university to establish that policy, to ensure that all the provisions that is necessary to protect people is in the policy, also with specific reference to the legislative prescripts. So we do work with universities to get the policies in place. Many a times we will form part of the consultative process to assist them to ensure that the consultations are done and that everything is included as it should be. In terms of students and the law students, whenever we approach universities for these transformation hearings, we also then engage the SRC, the unions, and we also engage SRC to say that if there are specific students with specific complaints, please ask them to come forward, be it anonymous, it doesn't matter, just so that we have the information. But nothing prohibits any student to lodge a complaint with us. If there's something specific happening at a university, then please do lodge a complaint with us so that we can look into it. As long as it deals with gender, then the commission does have jurisdiction to deal with it. If there's some of these law students that feel that they want to form, some form of partnership or something to that effect, they're welcome to contact the commission. Let's look into it and see what is plausible and what is workable. Thanks, yeah.
Thank you so much. I think that provides some clarity, and I think those are matters that the student chapter will obviously have to engage with going forward to the commission as well as the students' leadership in those various institutions. The public protector, there is a question from the questions that we've received asking the public protector on what is the role of the public protector in as far as the empowerment of women, especially women from, as they call it here, substandard conditions.
The question is very,
Broad.
I think, yes, broad, but then as indicated earlier that the public protector's mandate, which is provided for in terms of section 182 of the Constitution, is investigating improper conduct in state affairs and public administration. So, and we need to then issue a report and with remedial actions. So what we do as an institution, we have to deal with that improper conduct in state affairs and public administration. We have to remedy whatever administrative wrongs which we're picking up after the investigation. We further have more powers in terms of the Public Protector Act to investigate maladministration like your undue delay, abuse of power, abuse of state resources, unbecoming conduct by public servants. So in this particular instance, that's why I'm saying the question is so broad. If there is any abuse of power from the university management in any form, which definitely there are structures within the university which will deal with the matter, and University of South Africa, what also within their various institutions. Therefore, I think there is that ombudsman which is there. Especially a nice student or individual students, you can then you can escalate your complaint to the public protector. Unfortunately, I might be cutting because it shows that my network is unstable. I don't know what's happening, but then I'll be told if I can't be audible or you've lost me. So that's what the public protector is there for. And as I indicated, that our mandate is investigating public servants, and we don't have jurisdiction over private individuals. So I would encourage the student chapter, or I would encourage students, because again, according to Vision 2023, we are encouraging the public to be their own public protectors in their own spaces, in their own communities. Therefore, if there is any such conduct which is picked up or improper conduct, it should be dealt with accordingly at that level. And when you do not receive any assistance, and possibly the ombudsman within the institution is also not of any assistance, then you can approach the public protector. By this, we are encouraging an active citizenry so that you can hold whoever is on management or on leadership of your institutions accountable. So I think I've tried to just also be broad, because I think the question was too broad, and I hope I've addressed the concerns.
Thank you so much, Advocate Mkwabane, for that. Definitely talks to the mandate of the public protector in terms of the enabling legislation, the law that is establishing the office of the public protector. Indeed, I hope that the response is adequate to the participants. Doctor, there's a question here that is asking, why are we not funding the postgraduate qualification?
Okay, so postgraduate funding is dealt with through the National Research Foundation and the social sciences body. I'm not quite sure what the name is at the moment. But having said that, we also know that that funding that they have received for postgraduate is inadequate. We are having discussions with the NRF to see how we can channel NSFAS funders for undergraduate through for earmark funding at the National Research Foundation, because we begin to understand that there is a need for higher skills development. But the initial intent of NSFAS was to provide students with an initial qualification that will get them to enter the market. So in other words, to ensure a wider spread of reach for students. But there's a growing realization that there's a need for higher level skills as well, and that will include postgraduate skills. To give you an example, the NRF bursary allocation is about 1 billion rand, and that's just a guess, not a guess, that's about the order of magnitude, whereas undergraduate funding for NSFAS is 40 billion rand. So there's quite a big difference between undergrad funding and postgraduate funding. What a lot of people don't know, and which I would like to slip in here, is that NSFAS also are beginning to administer more and more non-DHET funding. So in other words, we administer the Funza Lusaka program on behalf of DBE, and we are also beginning to administer more and more CETA-based, which are more, shall we call it, skills-based bursaries. The reason why I mention it is because these other programs outside of DHET are not restricted to the financial criteria that I mentioned earlier. They've got other criteria. So we have developed a referral system so that where we disallow students to qualify for funding for NSFAS, we then refer them to Funza or to the other funding. We've also extended to the private sector. So often when people are close on the margin and they don't get funding or so, we find special ways to refer them to these other funders.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for that response. I see we don't have more questions on the chat. And I think the majority of the questions that were asked in a written format, I see that some of the issues haven't responded to by our esteemed panel members. We have now exhausted the item on questions and answer. And I wish to give this opportunity to...
Program Director, I just saw one question, if I can answer that in some of those we received in advance from the students, relating to the neglect of handling their cases by SAPs, which is very critical. And unfortunately, SAPs couldn't join us. But again, I will still request students, if you have reported cases or to the police of any violence against you in any form, and there is no response or cooperation from SAPs, and you can then contact our office, because we also work very closely with the Secretariat of Police for them to intervene. But also, as the public protector, remember, we can investigate that maladministration, because sometimes the issue of the delay in investigation, the losing of your docket, or as well the way you are treated at the police station, which Gender Commission might also come in there, especially support you, because sometimes when you go and report the matter, you find yourself being also abused or ill-treated by the very same SAPs or the police at the police station, and you are not assisted, and you are also questioned or subjected to interrogation. So I think issues like those should be reported, so that we can also make sure that it doesn't continue happening, because that also causes students or any woman not to report the matter, because sometimes you face another victimization. But then also when you've done that, you can give us the details, or you can also lodge a complaint on behalf of somebody anonymously, and or even that student can remain anonymous, and we can deal with the matter confidently, if they don't want to their identity to be known, so that we change the system, because that's not what we would expect to have. That's where then the public protector and other Chapter 9 institutions come in, because we are there to strengthen. We are dealing with you at the grassroots, and most of the time you find that you don't even have access to the commissioners or the management of SAPs. But when you come to us, we can then be utilized to help you. And I think what has been raised by Dr. Randall is very critical also, that as Chapter 9 institution, we need to see how we can support support governments drive to this thing of gender equality, in the sense that what he mentioned, that sometimes the anger or that destructive behavior, sometimes how can we make sure, I think Gender Commission, you might also have programs where, because gender is both females and males, I don't know how you can also check whether we look into the issues of the males as well, how their behavior, the results. And I'm glad when you say, Doctor, that there needs to be a research, because you'd find that a lot of the very same males are raised by women, I mean, as single parents, but then they end up being violent, not only towards women, because I think the statistics are showing that violent deaths are, the highest is against males, and it's very few against women. Yes, it's so grievous against women because women are vulnerable. But I think those cooperations will be helping, that we assist government, or we assist the Office of Women in the Presidency, but also various universities when they draft their policies. And I'm glad when you say, as NSFAS, you are also looking into those issues. Maybe we need to check how can it be incorporated in various policies, and how the funding takes place in different institutions. So I just wanted to just add that contribution, but also say to the students and all the organizations which are representing the students can take that into consideration. You need to use our institutions, but we are encouraging you to be active citizens, take them to account. Then when you can't get any breakthrough, approach us so that we can intervene. Thank you, Program Director.
Thank you so much, PP, for that input. I see on the chat line here, Tsepo Mahlobongwane says, I have a case of rape whereby the victim was brutally raped and the case just vanished. Can I refer the case to the PP? I think, PP, those are issues that you have definitely been reflecting upon just now. The matter must be followed up with the police. If there's no joy, certainly this office is better suited to be able to deal with those matters going forward. Thank you so much, Advocate Mkhwebane. Advocate Kalega, we wish to take this opportunity to hand over to you for the summary and way forward in light of the many challenges in terms of this topic, but also the very critical challenges and good work that all these institutions are actually doing to address the matter that is being discussed today. Would give you this opportunity to make your input. Thank you.
Thank you, Program Director. A very good afternoon, Public Protector, to our esteemed guests and all our participants this afternoon. I think indeed this is a very, very progressive topic. It's really issues that cut at the core of young people in the institutions of higher learning. And I think it's very, very vital and recognizable what the students of UNISA have done to ensure that they become a part of this engagement. It is indeed true that there can't be anything about young people without them, because they are the ones who actually feel the impact of the delivery or non-delivery of the service that is meant for them. And I think this has also assisted us as Public Protector South Africa to give us a broader view besides the cases that we receive that affect higher learning. Just to touch on, I think Dr. Randall has given us a good insight, on the figures and how much progress has been done. And as we know, historically, we didn't have this. So indeed, a lot of good work is being done. But I think that more work needs to be done on the material conditions of those numbers. you know, and in any event, when there is growth, there's bound to be certain challenges there and there. But I think there's a proper assessment that needs to be done. And I think as an office, we should also share, you know, on the cases that we receive, particularly in the beginning of the year, on exclusion because there's no NEFSIS. Currently, there's even a matter that we need to engage on where NEFSIS said that they've paid, but the university says NEFSIS has not paid. I mean, the student cannot be taken back and forth on incidences like those to an extent that they have to come to the public protector. There should be a clear communication channel between the university and NEFSIS. You know, students have enough undue stress with their studies, but having to worry on how that is going to be catered for. I think where a commitment has been made, it has to be followed through, and the administration thereof needs to be handled properly. And I think that's where the challenge is. It's the administration thereof. I really, you know, when I was on campus, we actually had NEFSIS offices at campus. So it was much easier to resolve these particular challenges. I think now with the call center system, it obviously needs to be strengthened, you know, to try and address these instances. We have, however, written to NEFSIS on the 5th of August. PP had signed the letter to NEFSIS and higher education. And Dr. Randall, would you kindly assist us to make follow-up so that we can realize the issues that we've raised there, and to the core are the issues that have been raised here today, and some of the questions that the students have raised, you know, on how can we assist to strengthen your system and strengthen your administration to ensure that there's a smooth process, you know, when it comes to NEFSIS and the provision thereof to the students. And the other proposal that we are making is that I think it's best that you establish an internal complaints mechanism. It is part of our Vision 2023 to ensure that institutions have got their own complaints mechanisms so that these issues can be resolved more speedily. It becomes more accessible to the consumer, and you can be able to monitor its outcome without it having to come to us. Public Protector has stated earlier on that in actual fact, we are the institution of last resort, which means that issues must first be ventilated internally. Now, when it comes to matters of NEFSIS, because there's no platform internally for students to raise these challenges, they come directly to us. Therefore, we don't serve as an institution of last resort, you know. And also it takes time because we again have to go back to NEFSIS, go to the institution. Whereas if that is something that you are doing internally, but it needs to be structured so that the results are evident, you know, on what needs to happen. Please, Dr. Randall, if we can have a response to that meeting and be able to speedily address these particular issues. And also some of the issues that the students have raised here. I think you've also addressed it, that it can't be simply assumed that students who are with UNISA are working and therefore are able to cater for their own educational resources. So I think from what we've started by looking at these matters that we are receiving and committing that we need to have a discussion and we need to find solutions to this, it would really help if we could do that as soon as possible. Because, you know, really the challenges as they continue to be, the more frustrations are received due to those challenges. From the Commission on on gender equality, I think PP has already touched on the point of how we can look at those issues, especially the issue of ensuring that indeed there is understanding on the dynamics and the diversities in respect of women and male, female and male children, and how those are being addressed by the policies in order to redress the imbalances of the past without causing the other one to feel neglected by the current system. And I think really, PP, it's about time that the redress is accelerated, because what is now happening because of these imbalances, it is affecting the future generation who has nothing to do with the current imbalances. And this generation is refusing to balance as fast and quick as possible, so because it affects them directly. So I think in dealing with this issue, it is really important that the need of the future generation is there. It is unfortunate that General Musikili could not join us, because it would have been good to hear how SAPS has probably tried to look into these issues. I know that there are a lot of matters affecting students at universities, not only internal abuses, but externally as well. And I think as Ms. Van Niekerk has stated that there's not enough security for students who live off campus. What is being done? But also inside campus, students are being attacked by outside people inside campus. And how is that being managed? And how is SAPS prioritizing gender-based violence within campuses? We know that it is not the job of SAPS to provide security in campuses, but what support are they providing, awarenesses and so forth. I'm not certain if UNISA has got a law clinic, but in addressing on how the law students in UNISA can assist in respect in these GBV issues, most universities have got law clinics. Now, law clinics assist obviously with legal complaints where people are indigent. And what some universities do is they also use that platform of the law clinic to provide street law programs. So law students can take advantage of the street law project to educate and do awarenesses on campus, and also serve as a liaison between the students of campus and the relevant institutions which are responsible for some of the challenges that they have. For example, ourselves as Public Protector South Africa, the police and so forth, so that we can also assist. But I highly think that you should look at the avenue of the law clinic. If there is no law clinic, I think you should engage about having a law clinic, because it plays a vital role in that respect. Public Protector, on the way forward really is that we are looking forward at having the meeting with NEFSAS and the Department of Higher Education very soon. Dr. Randall is here. I'm certain he's going to assist us to expedite that meeting. I have, in fact, just before this seminar started, I had a discussion with the COO that he should also contact the Director General of Higher Education for us to expedite this meeting, to ventilate these issues that are affecting learners of higher education, particularly issues around NEFSAS, challenges around admissions, and most importantly, ensuring that this complaints mechanism is being established. We are assisting other government institutions, including the CCMA, to establish these complaints mechanisms, and we think that it would be quite vital for NEFSAS and higher education to have a mechanism as such. Thank you.
Thank you, DPP, for the inputs. Certainly, what it really is a reflection of all these institutions that have this responsibility to assist this nation and the citizens. Certainly, what it means going forward is that I see a greater level of collaboration between ourselves Commission, NSFAS, as well as the police, to ensure that whatever issues that we pick up, certainly those matters could be taken up. And I see it, Dr. Randall, that there's more questions, but I think you would have to look at them and provide us with your view on those questions, including whether does NSFAS have MOUs with tertiary institutions on a turnaround times to resolve the disputes of the students. Issues around, again, Bonginkosi has been asking us where can we send the names of the students who do not meet the 350,000 threshold and so on. And those are questions that we will certainly take it up with the office doctor so that at least there's written responses to these questions. Our unit responsible for customer services and so on will certainly send through the questions for written responses so that there's proper interaction with those that have asked these questions. I wish to take this opportunity, and I do take note that the Lieutenant General could not attend this session today. I think all of us were hoping to get a sense and a view of the issues that the SAPS is dealing with and what level of collaboration would be required from the SAPS, from ourselves, so that we're able to confront these many challenges that are facing the female students in the institutions of higher learning. I certainly hope that in the near future, she would be able to join us and share her views on these important matters that are facing us. Public Protector, Advocate Mkwaba, I think I must personally thank you for leading the organization on many issues, including the concept of organizing this webinar for us to have those discussions. And I certainly hope that our participants have really gained a lot in terms of the many questions that they had, including inputs that they might have, because if these matters are not confronted by all of us, certainly we've got a reputation that we need to protect as institutions, but at the same time, we will need to be more efficient in how we deal with the issues that are confronting us. I certainly hope that the participants in the webinar have gained a lot and are indeed expecting some level of feedback from each institution and to what extent are we having this collaboration. I wish to thank Ms. Van Niekerk for coming through, Dr. Randall. I know we have a very busy schedule, the Public Protector, the Deputy Public Protector, and everyone else who made this day possible for us. And I hope that in the near future, we will definitely engage individually on the issues that were raised today. I wish to thank everyone for attending the webinar today, and I wish everyone the best of days today and going forward. And peace be upon you and wishing you all the best of health. And thank you so much for attending. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, Doctor.